Okay, good morning. So we are on Kuf Daled Amud Beis 104b. As I mentioned the last time we were learning that the Gemara has one more comment in regards to the text of the Havdalah. So we're going to look at that. And then we're going to look at one section, one halacha, like one subsection of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch that discusses the text of the Havdalah, specifically the text of the Havdalah as we say it on Yom Tif, which is Saturday night. We're going to look at that. And then, God willing, tomorrow we'll get back to the rest of the Gemara, where the Gemara returns to the subject of making Kiddush, specifically the making of Kiddush in the middle of a meal that one began on Friday afternoon. In the middle of the meal, the sun sets, it becomes Shabbos, and you got to make Kiddush in the middle of your meal, which is a subject we began with a couple of pages back. Right, so we're going to come back to that, God willing, tomorrow. So that's what they say there. One more comment from the Gemara on Havdalah, the Shulchan Aruch, which tells us, based on the whole Gemara, we learned the text of the Havdalah, and then back to the subject of Kiddush tomorrow, God willing. So let's begin. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines on the bottom of the page of Kuf Daled Amud Beis 104b. The word is Meisvei. So what did we have? The last thing we had was this story, this wonderful story about the father and son relationship. We told it to my children on Friday night. We had a nice little chat about the story. So, the story was where a father asked the son to go observe Ula make Havdalah. The son passed on the opportunity to someone else. Abaye went, and he observed Ula's kid Havdalah. And the father tells the son off for not taking the opportunity to be part of the transmission of Torah. In his arrogance, in his anger. Right, that was the story we had. So what was the Havdalah that Ula said? Ula said, Baruch Hamab. Well, there's different variants, Tosfos and Rashi, as to what Ula said. We're going to go with one. We're sticking with Rashbam and Rashi's interpretation. Ula said, Hamab ben Kadesh Lacha, the one who distinguishes between the holy and the mundane, which is a much more abridged version than what we would do. We're talking about a regular Havdalah on a regular Saturday night. We would say 3 distinctions. Ben Kodesh L'Chol, between holy and mundane, Ben Er L'Cheshev, between night and day, Ben Yisrael Am, between the Jewish people and the nations in the world. And then we would conclude between the 7th day and the 6 days of the week. And that 4th one is not really part of the 3 because it's just there. So it can be similar to the closing. We'll revisit that when we get to the Shulchan Aruch, right? And then we say, Baruch Atah Hashem, blessed are you, the one who makes a distinction between the holy and the mundane. At least the way Rashi and Rashbam learn Ula, all Ula said was that closing. Blessed are you, the one who makes a distinction between the holy and the mundane. And the Gemara challenges that Havdalah formulation of Ula. Yeah, with me?
Yeah.
Okay. That's all we need to know, really. Ula said, blessed are you, who distinguishes between the holy and the mundane. That was the entirety of Havdalah. The Gemara is going to challenge that. Right? Earlier, that you have to have a minimum of 3.
Right, but the Sadiki,
they only made 1. Right. So exactly. So the notion that you can get away, so to speak, with only making 1 distinction in your Havdalah, we already have precedent for that. Because we already cited to that Baron Shel Kadoshim, that holy God, the one who didn't know what the coin looked like, who would only make 1 distinction in his Havdalah, and he was in the generation of the Tanaim, the generation of the Mishnah, and he had his view different than the other.
That was a Meisvei.
That's right. That's correct. So that's a different Meisvei.
Yeah.
A different challenge. Not a question of how many distinctions you make, because we already established that you can go as low as 1, even though we ruled that you go as minimum of 3. But there is the other view, which goes back to the Mishnaic Eretz, you can go as minimum as 1, so that there's no question on Ula there. But there's another challenge to Ula's position, which is also, again, a Meisvei, because we're going to slide to a Mishnaic text. The Mishnaic text reads as follows. This is a subject that is much more elaborately discussed in Brachos, so we're not going to do a deep dive into this, only so much as it's related to Havdalah. Namely, Kol ha-brachas kulan. Every bracha, says this Mishnah's text, Poiseach b'baruch, v'choisim behem b'baruch, must open up with baruch and must close out with baruch. So let's explain. Baruch means Baruch Atah Hashem, those three words. Blessed are you, God. That's actually the essence of the brachas in those three words. So much so that it's during those three words that you have to know what you're going to be saying in the rest of the statement. In other words, you couldn't say Baruch Atah Hashem, and I'm not sure am I going to say Shahakal or Eitz now. Even though the formulation Baruch Atah Hashem is the same for either of them. Mm-hmm. Because really the essence of the brachas in those words, blessed are you, God, that's when you're addressing God, is in those words. And then the rest of the bracha is just, or not just, but the rest of the bracha is to specify what it is you're addressing God about. But it's these few words, Baruch Atah Hashem, blessed are you, God, that's the essence of the bracha. That's what you're addressing Hashem. Blessed are you, God. Especially as Chassidus explains, Ata l'neichach, when you're saying you, and you say the word you, you're talking to God himself, which is, in many ways, the deepest part of the bracha. As opposed to God, which is already a kind of praise or description of God, Lord, Master of the universe, and so on and so forth. These are descriptions about God. But when you say you, you're talking directly to Hashem himself. Atzma Samohos, the very essence of God. You, just you. So that word, blessed are you, God, is like the essence of the bracha. So says this Mishnah text, every bracha must open with that phrase, blessed are you, God, now you're addressing Hashem. And then you say whatever it is you're addressing God about, whether you're praising God, whether you're thanking God, whether you're beseeching God, right? There's many different ways in which you can thank God. And I divided it into three specifically. So, come in. Oh, good morning. Yeah, thank God. I apologize about yesterday.
Everything good?
Yeah, Baruch Hashem. Okay. So we're learning here that every bracha opens up with blessed are you, God, Baruch Atah Hashem. And that phrase, blessed are you, God, is the essence of the bracha. That's when you're addressing Hashem directly. You're saying, blessed are you. Yeah. Blessed are you, God. And then once you address Hashem, blessed are you, Hashem, Baruch Atah Hashem, then you begin to get into the details about what it is you're addressing Hashem about. And generally it's three categories. You're praising Hashem. You are beseeching Hashem, please. Or you are thanking. That's pretty much exactly. There are more, but those are the three types. There's Berachas HaMitzvahs, blessing of mitzvahs, but mitzvahs is also a praise, as we'll see, kind of. But that's really what it is. It's praise, a thanks, or beseeching. But they all begin with blessed are you, God, because that's how you're addressing Hashem. This Mishnah continues as well. So all brachas, Poiseach b'baruch must open up with blessed are you, God. And v'choiseh ben b'baruch. You should also conclude blessed are you, God. So you open up with Baruch Atah Hashem, blessed are you, God, addressing Hashem directly. You get into whatever it is you're trying to say, praising, thanking, requesting, and then conclude at the end, blessed are you, God, and put two or three words in which you encapsulate the essence of what you were saying. We discussed this earlier, right? Then continues. There are some exceptions to the rule because there's many brachas we make which we only say Baruch Atah Hashem once. We don't say it twice, right? Many brachas like that.
Yeah, like
exactly, any mitzvah or whatever. So
Shackle.
yeah, or shackle. So this rule doesn't seem to be universal. That you have to open up with Baruch Atah Hashem and close with Baruch Atah Hashem. So what's the exceptions? Explains this Mishnah text. In other words, in essence, a bracha should begin and end with blessed are you, God. But there are exceptions, namely, that's the rule. Even though actually, in terms of the quantity of brachas, most of them you don't do that. But this is the rule, at least officially, because you'll see so many exceptions. Chutz, with the exception of the following. Number one, Birchas HaMitzvahs, blessing over mitzvah. Like you said, L'boya mezuzah, L'aniach tefillin, L'hadak ner Shabbos. And Birchas HaPeiros, blessing over food. Again, also, you only say one time, Baruch Atah Hashem. Blessed are you, God. Thank you for fruits, for vegetables. Adama, ha'etz, ha'gafen, whatever it is. It's exception two. Right. What's the reason why over here you don't close out with blessed are you, God?
Which one?
For the mitzvahs and for over food.
so there's no other text in between.
Because no, the text in between is too short. you only close out again, blessed are you, God, when you've elaborated so much that when you come to the end, you want to say, blessed are you, Hashem, and get to the essence of what you made the bracha for. In this case, there is no, all you said was the essence of the bracha. Thank you for fruit. You already, there is no,
Unlike Havdalah.
that's where we're going.
That's where
That's right. Unlike other brachas in which there's an elongated, descriptive of whatever it is you're saying, and then you come to the end, blessed are you, God, and encapsulate the essence. But where birchas ha-mitzvahs and birchas ha-peiros, blessing over mitzvahs or blessing over food, in both those cases, all you're saying is the essence of the bracha. So there's no reason to recap. Nothing to encapsulate. So therefore you don't make the bracha at the end. Okay, so that's exception number one. Exception two, bracha smucha lechaverta, a blessing that follows the bracha just before it. So our example is the 19 brachas of what we call the Shemona Esrei, the Amida. So you open up the Amida with Baruch Atah Hashem, right? Blessed are you, God our Lord, and we talk about praising Hashem, who's the protector of our forefathers, Magen Avos, and then you conclude Baruch Atah Hashem, Magen Avram. Blessed are you, God, who's the protector of Abraham. The next bracha doesn't begin with it doesn't begin with Baruch Atah Hashem. It begins Atah Gibor, and then you conclude Baruch Atah Hashem. What is it? Machaya Mason.
Yeah.
And then you go Atah Kadosh. You don't say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Atah Kadosh. Right. So those brachas, because they follow the bracha just before it, they don't open with Baruch Atah Hashem, but they do close out with Baruch Atah Hashem, which you encapsulate the essence of the bracha. Okay, Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Kadosh, Baruch Atah Hashem Refech Haolam, Baruch Atah Hashem Chen Nadas, whatever the order is, it makes the order up. But that's the point. What's the reason there? Because all those 19 brachas become like one unit. And that one big unit did begin with, in other words, what's the Baruch Atah Hashem? As I said before, Baruch Atah Hashem is like the essence when you're addressing Hashem. So as soon as you began with addressing Hashem, you already have Hashem's attention. You don't have to say, blessed are you, God, every time you begin a new bracha. You do have to say it to encapsulate the bracha. Mm-hmm. So you close out every bracha with Baruch Atah Hashem, but you don't have to begin every time with Baruch Atah Hashem because you're already in this long process of addressing God, which began with Baruch Atah Hashem at the beginning. So the entire unit of the 19 brachas begin with Baruch Atah Hashem and close with Baruch Atah Hashem. And therefore, each individual bracha doesn't have to begin with Baruch Atah Hashem. This is bracha smucha lechaverta, a bracha that's near the other. The same thing is true of the brachas that precede Shema. Mm-hmm. The brachas, there's two brachas that precede Shema, right? After Yishtabach is a bracha, which closes out Psukah de Zimra, right? Mm-hmm. The Psukah de Zimra, the blessings of praise, which is like a bunch of texts from Tehillim mostly, begins with the bracha, Baruch Sha'amar, and closes with the bracha, Yishtabach. Mm-hmm. Okay, we closed that. We said Kaddish, we said Baruch, we closed out. Assuming Kaddish and Baruch is associated with that rather than beginning of the next, but let's just assume so, yeah? So now you begin the process of Shema, which is Baruch Atah Hashem, Yotzei Amoros. That bracha, Yotzei Amoros, is a long bracha. It goes through Hameir, it goes through Tizbarech, it goes through Hashem Okel, and it concludes Baruch Atah Hashem, Yotzei Amoros.
So follows the same pattern as
same pattern. You began with Baruch, and you close out with Baruch. The next bracha opens up with Abbas Olam. Doesn't say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Abbas Olam. It begins Abbas Olam, and it concludes with Baruch Atah Hashem Baruch Bam Yisrael, the one who chooses the Jewish people. And then you say Shema. So that second bracha is smucha lechaverta. It's near its friend. It just came off of a bracha, and therefore does not begin with Baruch Atah Hashem, just like the Shemona Esrei. Okay, clear? Mm-hmm. Now, same thing continues. Ubracha achrona shebekrishma, the bracha that comes after Shema. During the day, it's 1, and on night, it's 2. Mm-hmm. So during the day, you say Emes, V'yatziv, V'nachayim, V'kayim. That's the beginning of a bracha, which concludes with Baruch Atah Hashem Gal Yisrael. Mm-hmm. So there too, you don't open up with Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam, Emes V'yatziv. You just say Emes V'yatziv. Mm-hmm. The reason there is because it continues from Shema, and therefore that Baruch Atah Hashem, that bracha, is like still linked to the bracha which you began before Shema, which concluded with Baruch Atah Hashem, Baruch Bam Yisrael. Blessed are you, the one who chooses Israel. And the same thing is true at night. At night, it's 2 brachas, Emes Ve'amuna, Ve'amuna Kazos, which concludes with again Baruch Atah Hashem Gal Yisrael, and then you say Hashkivenu, which is bracha number 2. That bracha Hashkivenu also doesn't begin with Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Hashkivenu. It just begins Hashkivenu because it just came off the bracha before it, which is Baruch Atah Hashem Gal Yisrael. Blessed are you, Redeemer of Israel.
So the bracha on the nighttime is just an ending, the closeout, right?
That's right.
It's not. It follows the same pattern as the morning.
That's correct. Except in the morning you have two brachas before, one after, and at night you have two before and two after. So Emes v'Yatziv, Tzul Gal Yisrael is really a closeout of Shema. We have a principle discussed in brachas that we make no separation between the Amida and Gal Yisrael, but Gal Yisrael is really a closing of Shema. But we bring it near the Shemona Esrei is explained there in brachas. Okay, so all brachas. This is the text of the Mishnah here. This is Mishnah text. All brachas open up with "Blessed are you, God, our Lord," and closes, except for brachas on mitzvahs, brachas on food, and any bracha that's linked to the bracha before it, including the bracha that follows Shema.
It's almost like
The exception is bigger than the rule.
yeah,
Yes,
but it's
yes.
also maybe I'm not thinking right, but maybe the brachot that have to do with something physical don't have like a middle text. I mean, just straight to it. Like you just said that Pelot, and I said Mezuzah, and then Kifilin, and then it's all
Okay, the only that's a good one. That's good. The only difference would be the Birkat Hamazon. The Birkat Hamazon, which is a blessing for physical food, but also you begin Baruch Atah Hashem, the one who sustains the world. Then you close out Baruch Atah Hashem, Hazana Sakar, the one who sustains everything, and then you go Noideh Lecha. Noideh Lecha is the next bracha. You don't say Baruch Atah Hashem Noideh Lecha. Right, because it's a bracha which comes from the bracha before,
Right.
And it concludes with
the same rule.
And it concludes with follows the same with Baruch Hashem al aretz v'al hamazon. Thank you for the land. And then you go to the next bracha, Racham Hashem Elokeinu, and you conclude
Same thing.
No, I was saying that
Bani Yishlam, except for the bracha that follows that, where you do say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam.
Oh, the fourth one.
Yes, the fourth one does begin with Baruch,
Well,
but doesn't conclude with Baruch.
because that
Actually,
one,
that's because it was established later.
coordinated.
We established later. Yeah, that's discussed in brachas at length. Yeah,
that's-
it's established later. That's correct. So that's a good principle. It would work except for benching, because benching is on a physical thing. It's on physically food. And there too, the principle applies. We have a long bracha, and you open with Baruch, close with Baruch, except for the ones that follow. The ones that follow the ones before it, which is the second and third bracha.
Because there's a lot of intermediary things happening in this,
Okay, so that's what it comes down to.
right?
If you're
That's one of the
elaborate,
reasons.
that's right. If you're going elaborate, then you have to at the end encapsulate. If you're not going
That's what
elaborate,
I was saying.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost like the things that are physical don't elaborate. You're straight to it.
right? So except for the benching, where you do elaborate on physical things, you're elaborating on Hashem making food. Okay, you elaborate on Eretz Yisrael, on Yerushalayim. Okay, so of these exceptions, says the Mishnah text, sheyesh mehem, there are some of them. Poiseach ben bebaruch, you open up with Baruch. The ein chosim bebaruch, you don't close with Baruch, like the blessings over food, the blessings over mitzvahs, where you open Baruch Atah Hashem, but don't say again Baruch Atah Hashem. You just say once Baruch Atah Hashem. You open up with Baruch Atah Hashem, right? Because there's no elaboration. You get straight to the essence. V'yesh mehem, there are those shechosim bebaruch, where you conclude with Baruch Atah Hashem. The ein poisech bebaruch, where you don't open up with Baruch, like the brachas that follow the brachas before them, like in the Amida. Most of the brachas don't open up with Baruch Atah Hashem. They only close out with Baruch Atah Hashem because they follow on the heels of brachas before it. Now, Ba'atoy Ba'ametiv, the fourth bracha of benching of Birchas Hamazon, Poiseach b'Baruch opens up with Baruch, but Ve'ena Chaysim b'Baruch doesn't conclude with Baruch. Okay, Rashbam addresses this, and we're not going to go into this very deeply, but very quickly. We have four brachas in the Birchas Hamazon. The first one concludes Baruch Atah Hashem Hazana Sakar, the one who sustains everything. You're thanking God for sustaining life, for giving bread. The second bracha is Ala Aretz v'al hamazon, thank you for the land and for the food. So the first is you're thanking Hashem for food. The second one, you're thanking Hashem for the land that produces the food, specifically the land of Eretz Yisrael. And then the third bracha, you're thanking Hashem for Yerushalayim, and you're asking Hashem to rebuild Jerusalem, which is why you conclude Baruch Atah Hashem, Bani Barachav Yerushalayim Amen. Okay, those are the three brachas of Shemona Esrei, biblically speaking. And generations later, they added a fourth bracha, which is Atoy Ba'ametiv, the one who does good and increases good. That's the essence of the bracha, just those two words, Atoy Ba'ametiv. Which means that the essence of bracha 4 is actually not elaborate. It stops right there. Blessed are you, God, our Lord, who's good and does good. And it's specifically for two events that happened, because when the Romans exterminated basically Beitar, there was a point when the corpses didn't rot, even though they were left exposed, and they were given permission at one point to bury them. They were put on crosses by the Romans. They took the people of Beit and put them on crosses to send a warning to the other Jews not to rebel. But the end it was actually a symbol of a miracle because the bodies didn't decompose. And at one point they were able to bury them. So thanking Hashem for that miracle, we say Atov Meitiv. Now, because really that bracha is just 2 words, there's no reason to close out with Baruch Atah Hashem because you got to the essence right away. We, as per custom, add a whole lengthy other stuff because we want to talk about redemption and other things that we want to talk about. So it opens with Baruch, doesn't close with Baruch. Because it's independent of the first 3, and it's just one little essence. And therefore, really no reason to, it's independent of the first 3, and therefore it opens with Baruch, and you get right to the essence, and therefore you don't repeat a Baruch at the end. That's essentially what it is. Yeah, if I got the Rashbam right. Yeah. Okay. So top of Kufay Madalov 105a. All of this was cited because Kashal Ula. This seems to contradict Ula's practice. Because Ula, as we learned earlier, when he made Abdullah, all he said was, Baruch Atah Hashem, blessed are you God, Hamavdil ben Kodesh L'chol, the one who distinguishes between the holy and the mundane. So he opened with Baruch Atah Hashem, but didn't close with Baruch Atah Hashem.
But he had the essence, no?
Okay, so we kind of embedded the answer. But the truth is, the Mishnaic text gave us the exceptions, which was blessing over food, blessing over mitzvahs, and blessings that follow their friends. Havdalah is in neither of these 2 categories. It's a blessing of praise. It's not a blessing of thanks, like food or mitzvah is. It's not a blessing of request. It's a blessing of praise. And because it's not in the categories that the Mishnah listed as the exception, it should have an opening and closing, which is what we do. We have an opening and closing in our bracha. We say, Baruch Atah Hashem, blessed are you, God, our Lord, who distinguishes the holy and the mundane. We do a bunch of elaborations on distinctions, and then we conclude with the essence. Baruch Atah Hashem, blessed are you, God, the one who separates between the holy and the mundane.
Maybe it's on the reason that it doesn't have any elaboration.
That's the Gemara's answer. The Gemara's answer, it has no elaboration. But you have to link that no elaboration to one of the exceptions the Mishnaic text gave.
Right.
Which at the moment, it doesn't seem like there is. Which the Gemara's answer, it is linked. Right, but here's the question. The question is, because the Mishnah text says you have to open with Baruch and close with Baruch, with the exception of these 3 things, blessing of mitzvahs, blessing of food, and brachas that follow each other, Havdalah is in either of these 3 categories. So why is Ula not opening up and closing with Baruch? This is at least the Gemara's question based on Rashi's reading. Tosfos actually gives a different reading to the Gemara, which would skirt the question you're asking. It makes the answer less obvious, but we're going with Rashi's interpretation. Rashi and Eshba. So it says the Gemara answers, like you're saying, Amalach Ula would respond. Ula's not around anymore, he's passed.
Right.
It says us analyzing what Ula would say, what he would have said to defend his position, because he's already generations earlier. Hanami berchis mitzvahs damya. Havdalah is akin to blessing over mitzvahs, where blessings of mitzvahs only open up with Baruch Atah Hashem and don't close with Baruch Atah Hashem. Like you said, like Boya Mezuzah, Ladiach Tefillin or whatever. How's that? Because Berachas HaMitzvahs, the bracha over mitzvahs, my timer, what's the reason why I don't close the Baruch Atah Hashem again when I do the bracha on a mitzvah? Mishum dahi, because I'm going straight to the essence of thank you Hashem for the mitzvah. What's the Gemara telling us? The blessing over mitzvahs actually can be put into the category of thanks and praise. I'm thanking you, well, not praise, thanks. Thank you for the mitzvah. We assumed before that Havdalah was a praise. Says the Gemara, no, Ula would actually argue that the blessing over mitzvahs itself is a thank you, and this too is a thank you, not so much praise. It's thank you. Thank you for sanctifying Shabbos. And therefore, I can get straight to the essence. Hanami, this is the way I think to read Rashbam. Hanami Haidahi, this too is a thanks. Thank you for distinguishing between Shabbos and weekday. Done. Just like I said, thank you for the mitzvah of mezuzah. So this is the Gemara's answer.
So they were arguing.
Where's the limit to
what you're allowed to elaborate, what you're not allowed to elaborate on?
No, to something that's not a thanks. Everything we do is to thank God.
Well, some brachas are request. Please give me healing. Most of Shemon Esrei is request. Some mitzvahs are Like also, do you distinguish between praise and thanks? We do.
Praises would be Shema.
The brachas of Shema are praise, yeah.
That's why it follows
Well,
that-
actually, the first bracha, okay, yeah, they're mostly praise, yeah. They're praise.
That's why it follows that.
That's right. You praise Hashem for
Falls under the
the
Mishnah as
creation
well.
of the lights, and creation of the sun and the moon and the angels, and then you praise Hashem for. There is a little bit of thanks also. In the second bracha, there's a thanks. You thank Hashem for choosing us.
But primarily it's
It's
praise.
like
Primarily it's
any
praise.
long text, there's a thanks at one point. Anything that's not like a straight
To the essence,
blessing, like food or
There's a
whatever,
thanks.
there's a thanks
But it's
somewhere.
not only thanks, it's other things.
there's other things too. There's other. That's right.
Which
Which is why you
override-
have to encapsulate the essence. Because you go and elaborate, and you might add thanks, and you might add praise. So you have to come back to the beginning and re-encapsulate the essence.
If it were only
But
thanks.
if we're only one small thing, and that's all you were saying, that you would. That's correct, and that's what Ullah's arguing. That Havdalah is one small thing and one essential thank you for making Shabbos, and there's no reason to reiterate, or no reason to elaborate at all. Even
So I
in
guess
his view.
generally when you're praising Hashem, you add a lot of embellishments.
Correct, and then you come
That's
back to the
why
essence.
It's because of that. Like
Yeah.
here it could be a praise, but maybe it's only one.
Correct, and that's why he compares it to the mitzvahs, which is like one essential
Comparing it to
praise.
Thanks. Or
Thanks for the mitzvah, done. Thanks, and then thanks for Shabbos, done. Thank you for distinguishing between Shabbos and Holy. Okay. Okay, so I think we'll stop over here because we won't be able to finish the whole Shulchan Aruch that I wanted to do. We'll do it tomorrow. We're going to go to the Alter Shulchan Aruch, in which he, based on the whole Gemara we just learned, lays out the text of the Havdalah and explains why we do each line in the Havdalah, specifically as he describes the Havdalah that we do when Saturday night is Yom Tif, which has that longest version of the Havdalah, which, as we learned from the Tosfos that you prompted, we go through all seven distinctions, right?
right.
And so based on that,
Shabbos into Yom Tov.
Shabbos into Yom Tov, the Alter Rebbe is going to lay out the text for us, explaining what are the requirements, what's the custom, why the custom, how we do it, and so on and so forth. So that will come, God willing, tomorrow, and then we'll get back to the Gemara, which discusses the Kiddush Friday night, mid-meal, which is what we began with at the beginning. Okay, have a wonderful day, Eden.
Thank you.